Welcome to Stir Crazy's House of Boo. How are you? That's right guys, it's All Hallows Eve and we have a spooktacular symphony of drinks for you this evening. Hopefully you're all dressed to the nines and getting ready to take part. Before we get into our first drink, let's go through what we've got in our Halloween themed box this week. As always, you have your instructions on how to follow along, a pouch version of our middle cocktail if you purchased that one this week. If you haven't, remember it's only £4 to add that one to your box if you want a third drink. A bottle or can of Fever Tree Ginger Ale, the usual 4 bottles, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then a little garnish bag with an edible chocolate eye and some roses. That's our garnish bag guys, and we've also provided you with some trick or treat sweets as well. So that is everything you've got in the box this week guys. Additional things you're going to need glassware wise, our first drink is going to be served in a highball, so you'll need that one. And then our second drink will be in a rocks glass or whiskey glass. And then just some cubed ice, no need for a shaker this week guys, just a spoon to stir your drinks. And that is everything that you're going to need to make these wonderful spooky libations. So let's get ahead and make our first drink guys. Okay guys, so this is how we're going to make our first cocktail of this evening. This is the Devil's Punch Bowl. For this you're going to need your highball glass, bottles number 1 and 2, some cubed ice and your ginger ale. I've got mine chilled, open and ready to go already. Like last week guys, you know what you're doing with bottles 1 and 2. They're going to be going straight in the glass, but I'm going to be showing you what's actually in the drink, just so you can understand and how to make the drink yourself if you want to at a later date. I'll be getting into the information on who inspired this drink in a little bit, but first I'm going to show you how to make it. So this drink uses Wicked Wolf Gin, which is a local gin to us made on export. We've got some rosé vermouth in there as well. I've also got some homemade elderflower liqueur that we've made here in the bar. But as we mentioned on the list, we've listed Saint Germain as an ingredient, as if you wanted to make this yourself at a later date, as elderflower is now currently out of season, they're the best brand to use it when elderflower is not in season, but we've actually made our own for this drink, as this drink was inspired by foraging. So yeah, let's make the drink. So in bottle 1, it is a combination of Wicked Wolf that's been infused with wildflowers that we foraged ourselves up on Dartmoor. So it's 30 ml of that going straight into the glass. As always guys, like I mentioned last week when we talked about highballs before, things to always remember: make sure your glass is nice and cold, make sure your ice and your mix is nice and cold. The colder all of your ingredients are, the better, as it means the the ice has to work less, meaning it's not going to dilute as quickly. So 30 ml of the gin, then we're going to go for 10 ml of the rosé vermouth. One of the glass there. And then 10 ml of my elderflower liqueur. Like I said guys, it's not elderflower season anymore, so you're not going to be able to make it yourself. But if you wanted to make this drink at another day, later time, then Saint Germain is the best brand I would recommend to use for elderflower. So that's bottle 1, all in the glass right away. And then for bottle number 2, it is a combination of a rhubarb and dill shrub and some fresh lemon juice. So the rhubarb and dill shrub, Paddy's talked about shrubs before, they're just a way of preserving ingredients past the time that they're no longer in season. It's a real traditional method, and that's literally what we've done here, is that we've just taken some rhubarb, mixed it with sugar and white wine vinegar to preserve it. And we've also infused some dill in there as well, which I'll be explaining the thought process behind that when I talk about the drink and what inspired the drink. So that's just 20 ml of that in the glass. And then 10 ml of some fresh lemon juice. And that's everything that you're going to find in bottle number 2. So that's all my ingredients. Before I add any ice, I'm just going to give these all a stir. Make sure they've all got to know each other. And then add some cubed ice in. And then I'm just going to slowly top up with my ginger ale. For the top, and then grab my spoon, and then just going to give this one a stir and get all those ingredients combined. At this point, if you want to add some more ginger ale, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to add some more ice. And then I am going to garnish with, first of all, my very appropriate Boo Halloween straw. And then some dried rosebuds. Just literally placing those ones on top. And that is our first drink, guys, the Devil's Punch Bowl. Cheers. So there's our first drink, guys. So what inspired this cocktail? Well, anyone that's familiar with Dr. Inks and us as a bar before, obviously all this crazy COVID stuff happened and we had to close down and do Stir Crazy. A lot of our drinks are inspired by unsung heroes or people from history. We love an unsung hero or a person that maybe been forgotten about or not is someone that's been featured heavily throughout history. And this drink is inspired by that. It's inspired by a chap called Sabine Baring Gould. He was an Anglican priest born in Devon who travelled around the world, but eventually would settle back here and become an Anglican priest. He was born actually literally in Exeter on Cathedral Green, just up the road from us here. And he's sort of the unsung hero, the unsung grandfather of modern day horror. So Sabine, like I said, he was born in Exeter, travelled around the world, and came back and became an Anglican priest. And when he was back here, he formed a society that would explore Dartmoor and explored all of Dartmoor and learned about the pre-civilization of life that existed out there, and then the people that were living up there, the societies and the folklore societies living up on Dartmoor. And he fell in love with all of this sort of folklore and spooky stories that would be told over a fire, and he would forage over Dartmoor and see everything that sort of the West had to offer. And he was so inspired by these stories. One in particular, he was inspired by the story of lycanthropy. And he actually ended up writing a book on lycanthropy, which is werewolves. It's all about werewolves. And he would write this book of werewolves. And it's a book you can still purchase to this day. He talked all about the mysteries of werewolves, the whole full moon thing, their allergicness to silver, all of that stuff. And this was one of the first sort of horror books that inspired other horror books as well. He had a friend in particular, a chap by the name of Bram Stoker, who would later use a lot of Sabine's work in the lycanthropy book to inspire his own novel, Dracula. Actually, there's a character in the Dracula book called Jonathan Harker who works in law offices in Exeter, and that was Bram Stoker's little nod to Sabine and saying thank you to all the hard work he put into his book that helped Bram Stoker write his own book. So he sort of was the accidental grandfather of modern day horror, as Dracula is one of those classic horror books that led to a lot of other stuff as well. As well as that, he was a huge lover of the West Country. He absolutely loved where he came from, and he wanted to highlight all of the great agriculture that we've got in this area of the world. He actually wrote 5 books of the West, these huge volumes. I believe the second or first volume was focused all about Devon. It was focused around the people of Devon, the towns and the wild areas of Devon, and every part of all the agriculture that can be found here. And that's what we wanted to do with this drink. We wanted to create a drink that was inspired by Sabine and sort of all the different elements of his life. So we used Wicked Wolf gin. One, it's a local gin, and also obviously it's Wicked Wolf's typing, things like lycanthropy, tying into that werewolf story. We wanted to do it as a fruit cup or a Pimm's cup. That's what this drink is inspired by. It's inspired by classic Pimm's because it's what better way of highlighting lots of different sort of foraged ingredients than Pimm's. So we've taken Wicked Wolf gin, and we actually, when we made this gin originally, we actually went up to Dartmoor and we foraged wildflowers to infuse into it to give it that lovely floral aroma, which you should be tasting in the drink now. There'll be things like lavender, elderflower, gooseberries, all these different things that we threw into the gin to infuse it and give it this lovely floral aroma. The shrub, well, Sabine came from a time when preserving out-of-season ingredients would have been at an utmost. You couldn't get things all year round. So using a shrub to preserve the rhubarb, which was in season and isn't anymore, is a perfect example of how those sort of techniques were used. The reason we paired it with dill, rhubarb and dill have these lovely bounce-off aromas that work really well together, and we've used dill just to highlight the coastal life, as Devon is known for its coastal life, and Sabine talked a lot about the coast and the coastline of Devon, and when you think about dill, you think about things like fish and fresh salmon and stuff like that, so the dill's there to really highlight that. The rosé vermouth, just we wanted a lighter, different style vermouth. Sometimes Pimm's uses sweet vermouth, but we wanted a lighter style vermouth, so we've gone for rosé instead. And the ginger ale, just because it's a nice, most people recommend actually using ginger ale instead of lemonade when they're making their Pimm's. The name itself, Devil's Punch Bowl, where does that come from? So Sabine, as well as writing the Books of the West, he actually had thousands of publications to his name. He wrote literally thousands of books. And he wrote one novel about an area in England called the Devil's Punch Bowl. And so when we think about punch, that's why we think about things like Pimm's, because it is a punch. It follows that punch formula. So my ears are shifting around. And yeah, so it couldn't think of a more perfect name. It's got that lovely horror theme to it as well. So that's why we landed on the name, the Devil's Punch Bowl. And yeah, and that's the sort of the history behind that drink. It was inspired by Sabine and this wonderful chap that led to a lot of modern day horror stories. And without him, we wouldn't know, or we wouldn't have some of the horror stories that we still think of today. You think about Dracula and how many novels have been inspired by Dracula and that. So it was, yeah, it's those are the sort of people that we love to highlight in Dr. Inks, is these unsung heroes, these sort of hidden characters behind the scenes that were actually secretly inspiring things. And this was it's a special drink to us here as well, because it got us through to the final of Imbibe Shakes in the City competition, which means we're representing Exeter alongside some other really incredible cities. We've got a place in the final, and hopefully this drink can take us all the way and give Exeter its first win in that round. But yeah, that's our first drink, guys, the Devil's Punch Bowl. So now I'm going to show you how to make our middle drink, guys. I'm going to cut now and show you how to make the classic cocktail for this week. Cheers. I realise I've been talking this whole time and I've not even referenced the fact that I'm dressed like this yet, so that's hilarious. Maximum effort on my part for costume, guys, so hopefully your guys' costumes are looking better than I am. Where's the blood? Oh, the blood. Okay guys, so this is how we're going to make our classic cocktail for this week, the Satan's Whiskers. Obviously, for those of you that have got this as a pouch version, it's going to be nice and simple as just keeping your pouch nice and cold in the fridge. Remember, try not to pick a point of your fridge that's too cold, otherwise the liquid will freeze, and then by the time it defrosts again, it alters the taste of the cocktail and can make it taste quite nasty. So cold, but not too cold. But if you did want to make this drink yourself, or if you've got the ingredients at home, it is quite an ingredient heavy one this week, guys. This is what you're going to need. You're going to need a shaker set, a coupe glass that you can get chilling straight away. As always, the colder your drink, the better. And then the ingredient list, guys. You're going to need some gin. I'm using Tanqueray Sevilla because I wanted to use an orange gin, as this drink is focused around a lot of orange flavours. Both sweet and dry vermouth. Got some here. Some Grand Marnier. Which any of you don't know what Grand Marnier is, it's simple as it's orange liqueur mixed with cognac. So it's got that really unique sort of cognac flavour to it as well. The original recipe calls for orange juice. To make this one a bit more shelf stable and safe to transport rather than putting fresh orange juice in there, we've just used an orange sherbet instead. And then some orange bitters. And that's everything you're going to need to make this drink, guys. I'll show you how to make the actual cocktail. Pouch, guys, once as always, it's nice as simple as just getting a chill glass, giving the pouch a little shake before you empty it, and then just pouring the contents into the glass. But to make the drink yourself, so the gin and vermouth are all equal parts in 20 ml each. So I'm going to add them into the shaker now. Yeah, just 20 ml of each. So this drink, guys, the Satan's Whiskers, it comes from Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book, which we've referenced several times. Pretty much most masterclasses will reference this book, as it was such an important book in the history of cocktails. And I know we've talked a lot about the book itself, but basically the idea was that Harry was one of the most famous head bartenders at the American bar at the Savoy. And he would always write down these little recipes, jot down these notes of all these drinks he would create while working at the bar. And one day someone said to him, well, Harry, why don't you combine all these recipes together and actually make a book? So that's what he did. He took all these recipes together and created the Savoy cocktail book, which is still sold today and but a go-to for most bartenders still to this day. So this drink comes from there. It's a riff on a classic cocktail called the Bronx, which was essentially a perfect martini with some orange juice added to it. So that would have been gin, both sweet and dry vermouth, and a little bit of orange juice added to it. So he's just taken that a little bit further with some Grand Marnier, which I'm adding in now, so 10 ml of that into the shaker. And then some orange bitters as well, just really pushing the orange notes found in this cocktail. So that's 2 dashes of orange bitters, and then I'm just going to add around 15 to 20 ml of orange sherbet. It really depends on how sweet you like your drinks. If you like them more dry, hold back on the orange sherbet a little bit, or if you like them sweeter, add a little bit more in. And that's everything that goes into the drink, guys. I'm now just going to give it a quick shake and strain it into my glass. And then just dump your ice out of your glass. At this moment, it's perfect time for people that have a pouch. Just once your glass is nice and cold, just pour the contents in there. Otherwise, if you're shaking it, just give it a strain. And there we have it, guys. That is our classic cocktail for this week, the Satan's Whiskers. Thank you very much. Alright guys, let's make our second and final cocktail for this evening before I talk a little bit about the history of this drink and where it comes from, our inspiration for it. As always, you know the deal by now. So for this you're going to need bottles number 3 and 4. You're going to need a rocks glass that we're going to be serving this drink in, and you're going to need some cubed ice as well. It's built in the glass and stirred in the glass, and that is it, guys. It's a nice super simple drink this week. So this drink is called the Pumpkin Bumpkin. That wasn't my name choice, but I was voted out, and that was the one we went with in the end. So it's the Pumpkin Bumpkin. So this drink is riffing off of a New Orleans classic cocktail called a Veucaire, or you can go super French and call it a Veucaire if you want to be like super like French with it, but it's a Veucaire, which is then also riffed off of a classic cocktail called a Sazerac. But I'm not going to talk too much about that one because we're featuring that one next week in our Absinthe Masterclass. If you haven't bought it, go buy it right now. Otherwise, I'll turn up your house dressed like this, which no one wants. So how do we make this drink, guys? Well, for you guys, nice and simple. You've got bottles 3 and 4, and you're going to add them into your glass. How to make this drink if you don't have that stuff? Well, this one's a little trickier to make as it involves a whole process of altering a spirit, which is what we've done to create the pumpkin element of this cocktail. We've fat washed a spirit. Now, right now you might be thinking, what the hell is fat washing and why does it sound as gross as it is? Well, it is as gross as it sounds. Literally, you take a fat, usually either a vegetable fat or sometimes even an animal fat. Not very vegan friendly. Something that is a liquid, when it's warm or hot, is in a liquid form, and then when chilled or frozen is in a solid form. In this case, I've made a pumpkin batter. Pumpkin batter. I've made a pumpkin butter, which is vegan friendly. And essentially I've heated up the pumpkin butter till it turned into a liquid. I've mixed that with some cognac, and then I've let that sit at room temperature. The butter then separates. It sounds gross, but it makes a delicious tasting spirit. Travels to the top of the spirit, infusing, and then I placed that spirit in a freezer. And obviously the freezer is not cold enough to freeze the actual spirit, but it is enough to freeze the solid butter. You then just smash the fat up and then strain it through a filter, and that creates a fat washed spirit. So yeah, so this technique was invented by a chap called Don Lee, who ran a bar in New York called PDT, or Please Don't Tell. This was one of the first sort of speakeasy bars when speakeasies, the sort of resurgence of speakeasy was a relatively new thing. Now, everyone and their mums is creating a speakeasy bar. It's not really a trend that it's sort of been overused to a degree, but they were one of the first to do it properly. So he created this technique. He actually did it by taking bacon fat and washing bourbon with it to create this sort of bacon whiskey. Because bacon makes everything better. Bacon is good for me. So yeah, so it's a slightly tricky one to make, guys. If you do want to learn how to make that, feel free to drop us a message on socials and I'll talk you through the long, laborious process of doing that, or you can just use bottles 3 and 4 because that's why we did that. But to make this one without bottles 3 and 4, I need a jigger. I found a jigger. So, the cognac, the fat wash pumpkin cognac, what we're going to do is we're just going to add in 30 ml of that into the bottom of my glass. What would be great as well, if any of you followed my ice making technique from last week, if you haven't, go back and watch that, because I took you through how to make really cool ice. You could serve this drink over a nice big block of ice as well, which would look awesome. So 30 ml of the pumpkin washed cognac, then just 20 ml of straight normal good old American bourbon. And that is literally bottle 3. That's done. Don't need that anymore. Next up, we've got some Benedictine. I'm going to give a shout out to one of my favourite stir crazy customers, Di Bibby. She actually inspired me to make this cocktail. She's always mentioned how much she loves Benedictine, so I thought, I'm going to put some Benedictine. So this is for you, Di. Hope you're enjoying this cocktail. So we're literally putting in 10 ml of Benedictine into the drink. So Benedictine is a French herbal liqueur. Obviously, we covered Amaros a while back when we did Italian liqueurs. This is a French liqueur, different place. We are going to probably be covering these at some point, but essentially it's a herbal liqueur. It's real herby. Loads of herbs in it. So 10 ml of that into the glass. And then we're going to add in 30 ml of sweet vermouth. So it's a real boozy number, this one, guys. And then we're adding in a combination of Angostura bitters and Peychaud's bitters, which are there underneath the green stuff. Movie magic, I'm going to add them into the glass. And now they're in the glass. I even got it back exactly as it was before. But that's what you're going to find in bottle 4. Don't need that now. So now all we need to do is ice up our glass. As so. And we're just going to give that one a good stir to dilute it and make sure those aren't super boozy, because at the moment it's going to be super boozy to drink and it's going to burn you, and no one wants a boozy cocktail. How are you all? I hope you're all enjoying Halloween. Cameraman keeps laughing. Keeps laughing. Just keep staring. Just when you think you've stirred enough, a little bit further. Nah, a little bit more as well. Then I'm going to add more ice. Don't need that one. And then give it a stir, and that should just about do it. Yeah, that's looking good, nice and diluted. And now I'm going to grab my chocolate sweet. And then, normally I wouldn't do much of a garnish with this cocktail, guys. You can express a little bit of lemon peel over it or a bit of orange peel over it, but it's Halloween. We're all going to consume too much chocolate, especially if we're stuck indoors and we're not going to give kids chocolate this year. That sounded weird. I don't know why it came out like that. So just whack a nice bit of chocolate on the top. And that is our second cocktail for this week, guys. The Pumpkin Bumpkin. Still don't credit that name, but hey ho, could be worse. Cheers. It came with the world's worst looking tail. Should I wear it? Like, I don't know. So that broke. So where does this cocktail come from? Well, ages ago when I started making it, it's riffed off of a cocktail called a Veucaire, which is a French cocktail. Well, it's a French-inspired cocktail from New Orleans. So we talk about lots of different places around the world where cocktail culture booms and where drinks come from and where lots of classics get made. London gets referenced quite a lot, obviously, because we're the best. New York is up there as well. It's pretty good, but America. And then no, that's too insulting.
I can't do that.
No. New York, they gave us Trump, so they're whack. New York's another one as well. They're quite significant in the cocktail culture, and actually to this day, New York and London kind of fight back and forth who's sort of leading the trends of the cocktail world, and sort of they always look to either New York or London for what's happening in the cocktail world. And then New Orleans is another huge important place that for cocktails, and loads of classic cocktails come from New Orleans. And this one in particular comes from there, the Vieux Carré. Roughly translated, the Vieux Carré, as I've literally just learned, I've been saying it wrong for the past 10 minutes, so sorry everyone. Vieux Carré literally translates to Old Square, and it's inspired by the French Quarter in New Orleans, because there was a huge French populace in New Orleans. It's the name New Orleans. It's the New Orleans, America. Very creative with the naming of their places. Or Nouvelle Orleans, or Nouvelle Orleans if you're really French. I'm losing it. You spend the whole time forgetting you're dressed like this, and then suddenly you look in the mirror or you look at the feedback of the camera and you're like, oh yeah, I look like that. I look like a naughty little devil. So yeah, New Orleans, super important for cocktail culture. Loads and loads of different cocktails come from there. This one in particular, essentially it's riffing off of an already existing classic cocktail called a Sazerac. Like I said, I'm not really going to go into too much detail about the Sazerac, as Paddy will be covering that one next week, because that's our classic for next week. But essentially, it's just taking some of those sort of French-inspired flavors and American-inspired flavors and sort of smashing them together to create a new cocktail. So you've got things like bourbon. Obviously, around New Orleans, bourbon would have been a sort of significant liquid or spirit that would have been used there. And then Benedictine and cognac would have been quite prolific in New Orleans at the time, because obviously the French would have brought a load of liquid over with them. When this drink was first used, it was using a split base of cognac and bourbon. Some drinks sometimes it would have used all cognac, sometimes all bourbon. It would have switched to all bourbon during an era called the phylloxera. The phylloxera was a time in France when basically this sort of germ or this bug was wiping out all of their crops and meant they couldn't produce grapes, which meant they couldn't make their brandy. Once again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that stuff because it actually relates to absinthe, and Paddy's going to be covering all of that next week in absinthe. Shameless absinthe plug. Order your box now. So yeah. So this drink basically just encompasses all those different sort of flavors of New Orleans and sort of the French and American influence of it. In terms of our riff, I didn't want to do much to it. It's a great cocktail standalone. I just wanted to give you some of those autumnal flavors. We were thinking about spooky movies and scary movies, and one of my favorites growing up was always Sleepy Hollow and the Headless Horseman. But yeah, Sleepy Hollow, the Tale of the Headless Horseman, I love that. So you think about pumpkins, pumpkin flavors, and then I was experimenting with making pumpkin butter anyway, so that's where my brain went with it. And it actually, all of those sort of autumnal rich spices work really, really well with this cocktail. So yes, there was my inspiration for that cocktail, guys. So there we have it, guys. That was our Halloween masterclass. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, prancing around in my little outfit here. Hopefully you're all having a great time at home making these cocktails, and you've all dressed up and had a great time. Once again, things coming up. Next week is our absinthe masterclass. And for that one, we are going to be, Paddy's going to be taking the reins for a week, giving me a week off to recover and get all this stuff off my face. So he's going to be doing that one live as well. So it's going to be a live masterclass again, so you get to interact and throw some questions at him while he's filming that one. So please go to our website and grab that box now, because it's one not to be missed. It's the first of 2 absinthe masterclasses we're going to be doing, because it's such a huge topic and we love talking about absinthe so much that we couldn't just do it in one. So we're going to be doing part 1 of our absinthe masterclass next week. So please go and grab that box now. And like I said, guys, if you want to take part in the classic cocktail, it's just £4 to add that one into your box. So I thoroughly encourage you all to do it as well, because you get an extra cocktail for basically £4, which is an absolute steal. As always, to keep an eye on what we're doing, please head to our social medias. As well as that, please upload pictures of your cocktails. We love seeing the creations that you guys make at home and sort of how your drinks turn out and the garnishes that you do. And in terms of that, if there's anything that you would particularly like to see or any content that you want us to make, just comment, send us a message. If there's a masterclass you'd really like us to do, hit us up, let us know what you want to see, because we really enjoy making these and we want to continue making them for all of you. And we like seeing what kind of stuff that you guys want us to make as well. Apart from that, from myself and all the team here at Stir Crazy, have a happy Halloween, and we will see you all next week with absinthe. Thank you very much. Poundland's finest. Ah.